Hi and welcome back to another video about sim racing. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you're as consumed, as obsessed, as dedicated to sim racing as I am. And if not, you just like it as entertainment. But let's just assume for a second, let's presume even that you are one of those rarefied breeds of people dedicated to sim racing and the pursuit of speed. I'm going to assume that you, just like me, are not one of the 1%, hell, maybe let's say the 5% of people on the planet who are just naturally quick. I'm going to assume that just like me, you have expended hours, sweat, tears, maybe even a little bit of blood in pursuit of that 0.1 second, that 0.2 seconds, or for those of you as slow as me, maybe even half a second to a full second, just to feel as though you're being a little bit more competitive than the last time you hit the track, and just in some vain hope that one day you too could be fast and competitive as a sim racer. So a few disclaimers. I say slow, but I know that when I say slow, what I'm talking about is always being 1 second, 1.5 seconds, sometimes even 2 seconds slower than the absolute fastest drivers on track. So a little pragmatism has to be in order. So a more realistic target for me over the years has to just be at least within that 1.5 seconds. I know I will never, ever be within the 0.2 bracket, 0.5 second bracket maybe. That means you're mixing it up with the absolute fastest peddlers in sim racing. I just know that's never going to happen. And actually, the day I realised that, the day I stopped pursuing that, was the day I enjoyed my sim racing even more. Not only did I enjoy my sim racing more from that point, but I was able to focus on the one thing that improved my performance. And no, it wasn't the load cell brake, it wasn't the direct drive wheel, it wasn't even the virtual reality headset. All of those things did help me improve my performance. They made me more consistent, they made me more accurate. However, they were not the one tip, the one thing that made me a much better sim racer than I'd ever been before. It was mental discipline. It was the combination of a few simple techniques to be able to rely on intuition and muscle memory to get the car around the track, rather than actively focusing on where I wanted to place it and how I thought I needed to be driving to be faster lap by lap. Mental discipline, it sounds so simple. Focus, the ability to get yourself into a mental state where you get out of your own way and allow yourself to drive naturally, freely, on instinct. It sounds too good to be true, too simple. So let me hit pause, rewind, and take you back to where it all began. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people that needs to understand. I consume knowledge, whether that's in the written word, whether it's audio tapes, whether it's self-learning videos, or signing up for one of the very many, various, and very good academies that you can sign up to as a sim racer. Basically, I like to know how things work, what make things tick. So in 1998, when Sierra published Papyrus's Grand Prix Legends, which along with the manual came with the amazing four-wheel drift, a car guy's guide to Papyrus's Grand Prix Legends. In the table of contents, it covered Chapter 1, the end of 2 eras, Chapter 2, the hardware requirements, you know, what we actually needed to get the game up and running back in those days. Chapter 3, though, was Race Driving 101, and that's where it described the techniques, the approach to racing that you needed to somehow master if you were going to get those beasts around the track, but also what it meant to understand the physics of racing, what it meant to understand car placement, weight management, speed, driving lines, everything that anybody who'd been struggling to get around a track before now had a guide. There was someone who had dedicated the time to explaining this is what you need to do if you want to be fast. Chapter 4 was tuning for speed, which took it to another level, explaining what you had to do to set the car up to change the way that it was behaving, to give you a fundamental understanding of the physics, of the engineering involved. It was manna from heaven for someone like me. And whilst at the time, yes, it did help me, I have to admit, I wasn't fast, not by any means. I could get the cars around the simple track like Monza, but when it came to something a little bit more, shall we say, demanding, I was multiple seconds off the pace. So we move on. April 2003, Lopez would draft the masterpiece manual, Going Faster, Mastering the Art of Race Driving. Paperback, illustrated. However, I wouldn't stumble across it until the 18th of July 2010. This was because I was struggling to go faster to get on top of the Skip Barber in iRacing, and this was one of the manuals, one of the go-to guides that was recommended for anybody who was looking to try and, well, go faster by improving their racecraft. And this manual, just like the 4-wheel drift guide, again covered off the topics of racecraft, position in the car, weight management, acceleration, thrust to rate ratios, all of the things that again were just brilliant for me because I like to consume knowledge. However, applying said knowledge was a completely different, well, challenge. You see, the problem for me was all of that theoretical knowledge that was flying around in my head, I attempted to apply when racing, consciously thinking about my braking, consciously thinking about my throttle application, consciously thinking about my car placement. So much going on that I did not have the spare capacity to just, well, race. And what doesn't help is, I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people that kind of is a little bit robotic. I cannot free myself up behind the wheel. All of the advice to have a looser grip on the steering wheel, to have loosened muscles so that your reflexes could be on point rather than restricted and constrained by a tight, taut core. All of the good advice was going to waste because I am somebody that, well, I get rigid. I freeze up really. In races, I could tell, I could feel that I was clenching the wheel with a death grip that, well, I've gone through a few wheels in my time. I've gone through quite a few joysticks, game controllers, through, well, wear and tear, because over the years, I just had that death grip. I could not put any of the good advice into practice because I couldn't get out of my own way. Whilst racing in iRacing, I signed up to a few feeder series for some of the top category leagues that were going on. One of them was the V8 Supercars feeder series. In that, there were moments where I felt I was getting somewhere, I was improving, but again, no matter what advice I got, I still had that death grip on the wheel. I was still overthinking it. I was still getting in my own way. I then signed up to Apex Racing's Academy, where we had access to some of the best racers, some who today you would recognize are some of the top esports drivers in motorsports, well, sim racing motorsports. Some of them have gone on to have careers, or at the time had careers anyway, but were within the academy. These are names you would recognize, and they again would espouse the same great advice, and I would sit there behind my wheel just lost, not understanding how I, a human, you know, I have the same sort of physical makeup as everybody else, just could not apply the good advice and consistently be fast, consistently be good. Yes, there would be moments where I would have like a blue moon moment where I could put in a lap, in practice obviously, 0.something seconds off the absolute fastest, but that was it. Never to be repeated, and most certainly never to be applied during a race. I would revert back to my thinking about it too much, too many thoughts going on in my mind, tight grip on the wheel, rigid stiff muscles, and I would make mistakes. I would be inconsistent. I just would still be slow. However, during one of the Academy sessions, there was a piece of advice given that has been the turning point for me. Someone recommended that we read a book called Inner Skiing by Timothy Galway. If you've never read it, I highly recommend, if you want to improve in any sporting endeavor, including sim racing, go read that book. The book was written on the back of the inner game of tennis, a way of helping people free up their inner ability, their intuition, performance, by getting their mental focus right, by getting their conscious mind out of the way and allowing the subconscious mind to take over. It ultimately helps you overcome your fear, your trust of your instincts, and lets you intuitively perform. The book talks about people that go down a piste on skis, whether they're professionals or they're absolute novices, thinking too much about what they're doing, their body positioning, and how they, more often than not, are the people that have accidents and injuries. The book talks about those who have the most sublime, the most harmonious flow as they go down the piste or down the slalom, are those that just let their body freely respond to the undulations of the snow passing beneath their skis. The book focuses your attention on thinking gets in the way of doing. It reminds you that if you want to know how you learn to do anything as a child, just watch a toddler. A toddler will intuitively do the right thing, put their body in the right position. They say, if you ask an adult to tip a tube of Smarties out onto the floor and then to pick them all up, they will consciously think about bending over or squatting or bending their knees, and then they will consciously think about it. Whereas they said, tip a tube of Smarties out in front of a toddler, say nothing, and watch them immediately squat onto their haunches and start picking up the Smarties. They'll probably stick them in their mouths, but they will instinctively do the right thing. They don't have to think about it. It's natural. And if you can apply that same turning off your conscious methodical thought and allowing your subconscious, your intuition to just come to the fore when you're driving, you will feel what it feels like when you do the right things on track. You will feel what it feels like when it goes wrong. So when you practice, if you just try and feel that feeling of when it went right again, you will intuitively do the right things. The book talks about whether or not you're striking a tennis ball, whether you're kicking a football, or again, whether you're skiing. But for us as sim racers, whether you're braking, accelerating, turning in, tracking out, how did it feel and what was the outcome? Did you have a moment when you went through a corner and it was the best you've ever done it? Think about how it felt rather than thinking about what you did. Because the more you can rely on your instincts, the more you can rely on what you felt, the more you can harness that muscle memory and intuition, the more likely you can repeat what was good because you know how it felt rather than what you did being something you thought about methodically. It sounds so simple. It truly sounds way too simple. It can't be that easy, right? However, genuinely, I haven't consciously thought about what I'm doing in the car at any particular point of time on track since I truly embraced everything in the book Inner Skiing. I now just leave the pits and drive the lap. If I got around the track and it felt good, I just go back and remember what I was doing when it felt good. If I go round the track and something feels wrong, I can't make my way through the apex, or I go off the track, I just think back on, well, what was I doing? How did it feel when it went wrong? And then I do another lap. At the moments when my conscious tries to steal my focus away from me and get back in the way, I slow down. So I had to learn another trick, another tip to quickly shut down conscious thought. And that tip was to ask yourself in your head, I wonder what my next thought will be. Do it. Do it right now. In your mind, ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be, and see what happens next. The advice was that if you ask yourself to wonder what your next thought will be, your mind will go blank, because you can't actually think about your next thought. It doesn't exist. So your brain kind of just goes pause, and you get this tranquil serenity. Now, it might not work for everyone, because apparently some people don't have an inner monologue. So if you don't have an inner monologue, just say it out loud. I wonder what my next thought will be. Let me know. Do you go blank? Because I do. Whenever I force myself to think about what my next thought will be, I instantly have a moment of blank, which shuts down all of my conscious thoughts about what I'm doing on track in the car at that given moment of time, and takes me straight back to the inner skiing. What am I feeling? Does it feel good? Do I feel at one with the car? Do I feel that I'm in a good rhythm? Did what just happened on track feel right? And if not, remember what I was doing when it did feel right in practice. And that really was the best tip. That was the one thing, or two if you include the I wonder what my next thought will be, but mental discipline, mental focus, and shutting down my conscious thoughts was the one thing that made me a much better sim racer than I had ever been over the previous 25 years of my life. I have no idea whether it would have made a difference if I had known this back in 1998, but I like to think that maybe if I had known that, today I wouldn't still be chasing to try and still be 1.5 seconds off the absolute fastest. Maybe I would be chasing to be less than 1 second off them instead. Let me know. Do you consciously think about what you do, or do you instinctively already just drive on intuition? What has the best tip, the best guidance you have ever had, and what was it? Share it in the comments below. Because for me, following the inner skiing, going on muscle memory, going on intuition, shutting down my conscious thought, has helped me have some of the best sim racing I've ever had in Le Mans Ultimate, because it gives such great feedback to me, because the cars feel so good that what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, more in sync than they have ever been in any other title I have raced over the past 3 decades. So much so that over the past few months I have been exploring the boundaries of my comfort zone when it comes to setting up the car. Normally I would race with understeer because, again, conscious thought, I needed to be in control of the car and I needed to be thinking about what it was doing and how I could get it around the track. Whereas now I'm exploring the boundaries of oversteer and just relying on my instincts and what it feels like when the car gets away from me. This last race that I had at Spa in the European Endurance Series was the most extremely oversteering setup I have ever driven in my entire life, and I got it to the end of a 90-minute race, consistently putting in possibly my best performance of the year. And the car was so oversteery, so pointy, that my heart rate was through the roof, because I was constantly, instinctively going on intuition, correcting moments of oversteer, correcting losing the rear of the car, all the way through the 90-minute race. My heart was pounding. Every so often, conscious thought would creeping at the back of my mind and ask, what the hell are you doing? You're going to crash. And I would wonder what my next thought would be. And all of a sudden, peace.
7th position.
I could focus instead on,
bring it back round.
well, how's it feeling? We're doing okay. The car feels fine. Actually, I remember what it felt like when we went through this apex in practice. Let's just make sure we do that again the next time we come around here on the next lap. And that inner skiing, wondering what my next thought is the best tip I've ever had that has actually had demonstrable results in improving my sim racing. Join me in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Let's go.